G'day guys, how you doing? Panzer Garage here. Today we're going to have a look at Cyberhobby's Orange Value Pack, the StuG III Ausf A, Michael Wittmann, LAH Division Barbarossa 941. As many of you probably know, Wittmann started off in the StuG A, before he progressed through Panzer III, Ford Tiger, through his career. This kit comes with a bonus Panzermeier Liebstandarte Division from 1941 soldiers. Overall, this kit, to be honest, it's not too bad. In terms of value pack, if you're a Wittmann fan, then I suppose it's a bit of a must. In terms of the mouldings, it's probably not as good as some of the other value packs. You'll see another video I put up about a StuG CD. I think the mouldings in that are far better than this one. Considering it was Wittmann, I thought that they would have given you slightly better mouldings. There's a fair bit of flash on some of it, particularly the soldiers that it comes with, and I just think that the actual moulds aren't as sharp as the later stuff. However, I think there's a bit of a mix in parts there. They've got some newer than older. That might have something to do with the Ausf A, but at the end of the day, it's a good value in terms of money. If you want this as part of your collection model, then that's it. That's your Ausf A. In terms of other StuGs, keep an eye out for some of my other reviews. This is the one I was talking about with slightly better mouldings. Is the CD with the L48. You can look that up on YouTube as well. You've got the Tamir Ausf G. You'll see a review up on YouTube of that as well. Ausf G, good vehicle. This is a good addition to my garage because of its finish, so slightly different version and colouring in terms of paint. In terms of Zimmerit, we've got an Ausf G here with Zimmerit. Very, very good. You'll see the review on this later. One of the best mouldings I've seen. It includes the waffle Zimmerit in the moulding itself, which you're either going to like or not like, depending on what sort of floats your boat. And lastly, the StuG IV. Again, excellent moulding. This is an early production one. I like the StuGs. I like to have a few different versions because again, they're the most widely produced German vehicle, armoured vehicle of the war. So there's that. So back to the Wittmann Ausf A. The StuG itself, as I said, the most widely produced armoured vehicle of World War II for Germany, and instead of having a turret, had a fixed casement mounting a powerful gun, and it sort of changed throughout the war. Originally conceived to support infantry, the StuG itself developed in time to become a tank hunter, but it was actually a part of the artillery, not part of the Panzer Corps. So some people don't understand that, particularly if you're going to paint the uniforms of some of these soldiers. They actually started off in the Sturm artillery. The height of the vehicle, as I've said in some previous ones, was never meant to be above the average height of a soldier, and it was built on the chassis of the Panzer III, which some of you, of course, will recognise. As the Germans came across the KV-1s and T-34s, the low velocity L-24 began to be replaced with a higher velocity 75mm L-43 gun in spring 1942, and then it sort of developed on in there with the Ausf F having the L-48 later on. In terms of the Ausf A itself, These were from January, produced from January 1940 to May 1940. Only 36 were produced by Daimler-Benz. The last 6 of those being based on the actual chassis that were diverted from Panzer III Ausf G production. So they were really originally just a modified chassis from the Panzer Ausf F, but with the front armour actually strengthened to 50mm in the Ausf A. That increased in time with the other variants, and you will see other variants, you know, sometimes modelling or in photos you'll see them with concrete and all that sort of stuff, wooden logs, all that sort of stuff put on there. So for such a small number, a very, very interesting model to have in your collection if you wanted the Ausf A, because you know, some of the track wheels are in a slightly different location to the later ones, as you'll see in the instructions shortly. Now moving on to the actual kit itself. Here we have this fairly standard Cyberhobby coloured leaflet, which I think is a great idea, as I've said previously. And again, it shows you parts that aren't used and lays that out quite well. I like the fact that it's actually in colour. Again, following their fairly sort of standard view, we start off with the chassis and the wheels. And then we finish off the rest of the chassis with the tracks. These don't come with magic tracks, they're sprued tracks. They're not too bad if you could be bothered cutting them all out. I haven't decided yet which ones I'll use, either them or frills. I've got frills for this vehicle. It'll just depend on how it sort of turns out during the build, whether I decide to use what came with it or use the frill tracks itself. Down here we've got adding the hatches, the rest of the casement. Again, not as good as the last CD that I reviewed. It does have the weld marks on there, but again the actual finality of the detail is better in the Cyberhobby CD version. And here we've got the rest of some modifications that actually have to occur here with your knife for the hatch, but that's fine. Pretty simple stuff. And you've got the mudguard running boards going on with finishing off the rest of the casement and some finer details in there. On the back we've got addition of the gun. I've got I had a look in this on the sprue. I didn't actually like the moulding for the gun, so I bought a L24 turned aluminium barrel that I'm going to use, simply because this tank's getting actually added to a Wittmann collection, so I'm trying to make it as a little bit better than it normally would be. But I didn't bother with any more other items. Actually no, that's incorrect. I bought some photo etch parts for this as well, which got sent over from Poland. So it's so some of these things will actually get replaced, and when I build this I'll put some reviews up on YouTube for it. Here's some finer details. The tools aren't actually too bad. You've got the standard basic drag and jack. That's okay. I think some of the PE stuff that I've got can sort of change that, but I'm not overly fussed about that. Once you paint it up and detail it a bit, some of that kind of gets hidden amongst the paint. And then finalising the rest of the vehicle up here. And then of course you've got a Wittmann figure that you can paint up and put in as well. At least I assume it's Wittmann, because it's quite often with Cyberhobby you don't get figures for your vehicles. This one does come with it, so that's a nice little addition that you can sort of add, particularly if you want to make a diorama. And talking about dioramas, we've got the Panzermeier LAH personnel that comes with it. Again, that you can make with it as part of a diorama. Again, as you'll sort of see in the mouldings, that there's a fair degree of work that needs to be done on those. Some of the flash. However, is it better to have them or not have them? Well, then I guess it's your choice to either use them or not use them. But there's some interesting sort of cam variations in that here that we can use. You know, you've got an officer here with the coat and scarf. So I think, you know, flash or no flash, I think it's good to sort of give it a go, see how they turn out anyway, as part of just developing your model skills. It's just unfortunately it ended up taking a little bit more time. And of course, paint schemes on the back, you have the choice of using Wittmann's tank itself or choosing a different unit, but essentially all the same paint scheme. It's just the your decals that are going to end up being different. So that's the instruction leaflet. Let's move on and have a quick look at the sprues. You've got the standard chassis here. You can't really see it from the camera, unfortunately, no matter how much I zoom in, but it's not as good or not as sharp as the CD version I reviewed or some of the newer Dragon ones. However, you do see some of the seam marks on them, but they're just not as sharp. However, is that a big issue? Maybe not. I guess we'll find out when we build it. It's certainly comparative with anything from Academy or any of those. So I wouldn't get overly fussed to say that it's not, certainly not poor. It's just not as good as some of their other kits. And I guess that's a factor with Dragon. Their stuff generally is very, very good. It's just their newer stuff's just better. So it's not to say that this is poor at all. You wouldn't have seen in the instructions, but this has to be cut off and moved slightly backwards. There's another one there to glue on, so it doesn't matter if you destroy this, but this actually has to be removed because the StuG III, its upper wheel was slightly back. So yeah, not too bad at all. We start with, there's a lot of sprues here simply because you've got a lot of the track that has to be, that's on the sprues. Some of the wheels here, again, they're not as fine. There's a little tiny bit of flash in different locations, but again, not too much of an issue. I don't think these wheels are as well detailed as some of the other ones you'll see in the kit in a minute. So some of these parts won't be used, but you know, they're certainly not as sharp as some of the newer ones. So I'll stop harping on that point. It's kind of a reflection throughout the entire review. Got a whole lot of track sprue. Again, I'd say that these are as sharp as some of the Magic tracks that I've seen in some of the packets, so you could certainly use these if you want to. It's just a lot to cut out. These wheels are quite sharp. Suspension is quite sharp. So overall, these actually aren't too bad. You know, if you're certainly into cutting all these out, there is certainly a lot of them to do with that, just to give you an idea. You've got your figures. You've got two torsos and arms, but you've only got, so you would get excited you've got a spare. Well, you have got a spare torso and arm, and they're actually not too badly moulded, to be honest. a little tiny bit of flash in that on these arms, but they're just as good as anything that I would get elsewhere, particularly again once you paint them up. Here though on this sprue, which is the same one, it's got an additional sprue on the end, which gains a slightly better or slightly clear, well, a clearly moulded jack there, so that's quite good, and a fairly clear head and arm. So that's actually, you only get one of those. That came slightly bent, so I'll need to make sure that's okay when I put that together. But other than that, these sprues look to be more recently moulded because they are a lot clearer than the earlier sprues that I showed you. In terms of the casement hatches, this looks like an older moulding compared to what I just showed you there. Slightly different shade of plastic, so I can tell that this shade of plastic must be the older ones. There is some weld seams in there, so it's not as if you don't get them, they're quite good. The hinges for the hatches are quite well detailed. On these, not as clear as the ones from the CD that I reviewed, but you know, good enough. Particularly with a bit of pin washing and stuff like that, you can bring it up to be quite good. Filters and that are good. Maybe I'm just being a bit overly harsh on this model compared to the CD one that we reviewed before. Again, the rest of the superstructure quite well. If I wanted to, a lot of these parts are going to cross over into the CD, so if I wanted the Wittmann one to be a better product at the end, I could probably use this sprue from the CD and use this on the CD, but you know, much of a muchness when it sort of comes out. So they're not too bad either. So now we get to, I'll leave the soldiers to last. Weapons, fairly sort of standard weapons. MG34, oh sorry, MG42, MG34, rifles. In this one you get a sniper rifle, which is quite interesting to have as an addition. Although I think it's actually used in this kit if you wanted to. MP40s, K98s, and a little revolver. Yeah, so not too bad, quietly well done. And we can see now the actual soldiers. Not as good as some of the other ones I've reviewed. However, I suppose in a way you just sort of see it as a bit more challenging to do. So this is probably not a bad one to have a look at. You can see a bit of flash in here. And as we sort of have a look at the remainder of them, there's flash in a couple of other locations as well. Here the helmets, you know, aren't as sharp, they're a bit rough, a bit more sort of casty sort of view on them. And again, not as sharp as some of the other ones I've seen. However, still interesting, still looking forward to doing it. It's just going to take me a little bit longer to cut through it, but in terms of uniforms and having just some additional soldiers in different gear, it's well used to it. You do get, that's the only PE that sort of comes with it. If you filters, I mean, I could, as I said, I've got some PE that I'm using anyway from Aber that I've got for the Ausf A. So we'll see how that goes, and your sort of standard and your various decals. You can't see these too well, but again, it's just a small sort of decal strip that that's essentially for the schemes that I showed you on the back of the instructions. So you got Wittmann's option and a few different other ones. But overall, a good kit. I'm looking forward to that. I'll put some posts up on that as well as we build, and I look forward to sort of seeing how that goes. I'm not going to build a diorama with it yet. I'll just build the vehicle and the soldiers, and then see if I end up doing a diorama or something of that later on. So there we go. That's kit 9143 from Cyberhobby. Michael Wittmann's StuG III. Thanks for watching.